Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. Today I have a layout process video for you with the Mix It Up Monday hop, and that is hosted by Peacecraft Love Clubhouse over on Facebook, and we use a sketch when we start our hops, and this is from Lottie Loves Paper, which is a shop that I think recently shut down. So let's go ahead and dive into this sketch and adding mixed media. I am going to be documenting today. My YouTube channel has hit 2,000 subscribers, and in fact it's almost at 3,000 subscribers, and when I organized a YouTube hop, which is coming up on the 14th, so be sure to come and join me for that because there will be some prizes. But when I organized the YouTube hop, the channel was just going through a burst of subscribers, and I've gone well beyond the 2,000 mark. So I am documenting that here today with a couple of screenshots from my YouTube channel analytics, and trying to highlight some of the excitement over that growth, and also trying to be, kind of cautiously optimistic because YouTube fluctuates. So just enjoying the moment for now, and we'll see what happens in the long run. I am going to mat everything up and add several layers that way with this sketch. On the actual sketch itself, there was kind of an outline, and I'm taking that actually as building up layers. And the sketch also was pretty full of white space, and you'll see in my typical fashion, I'm going to fill up just about every square inch on this layout and kind of eliminate that white space as I go, because that's how I roll most of the time. I'm working on it. I know white space is a beautiful, lovely thing that a lot of people enjoy, and I just fill it all up. So as we start off here, I do start off with some white space and this watercoloring. So I have just a watercolor paper going on here, and this is a Strathmore Series 400 watercolor paper. That's usually what I use. I mean, it's not the best paper, but it's easy for me to access, and it's affordable, so that's what I use. And I started off with some blue swipes of color here, and I ran out of room for a last swipe there. I did set that aside to dry, and then I realized, you know what, I wanted that blue to be more green, and I even pulled out the green pan from the watercolor set, and then I forgot to add it in there. So I flipped my paper over, and I am making a greener version of these blues on the other side, because I wanted to kind of go with my channel logo stuff, which is kind of these greeny blues. And then that swipe ended up being too blue, and I thought about fixing it up later, but in the end I didn't, and it's just as well because I ended up covering up most of it anyway. But that is also how I roll most of the time, so it is what it is. That is my mixed media portion, and then I'm going to go ahead and, while that's drying, move on to a bunch of bits in the background. I am going to gut most of my papers. As you can see, this blue frame there is going to be the layer behind my mixed media, and I will gut out this kind of birthday, it's kind of a birthday paper from Simple Stories, but I'm going to use it as a general celebration, and I am sure to put enough glue around the edges of both the upper layer and that lower layer so that things will stick properly. And of course I mismathed with my gutting, and I've got a little rim hanging out. Now it doesn't matter because you won't see it, it just means not as much glue is adhering all of those pieces together, but I'll add more glue to it later, and I'm not going to worry about it too much. The next step I'm working on is embellishing, so I do have some embellishment ideas here. I've got a frame that I want to use, and in fact I want to frame up various areas because these photos aren't all that exciting on their own because they're just lists of numbers. So I am going to highlight some of the important numbers with various styles of framing, and I'm creating my own with a circle punch and kind of a starburst punch to create the frame. I've got a glittery frame that's pre-made, and then you'll see me with one more kind of framing idea. It's not really a frame, but it's an idea that we'll get to in a little bit. Now this frame is pretty narrow, so I brought out my micro foam dots, and I love those things. They have come in so handy for things like this over the course of the past year. I think I've been using them. And I am starting to build up those frames there. Now my mixed media piece is almost dry. That's part of the reason why I like simple watercolor, because it dries pretty fast as opposed to some of the other mixed media stuff that I do. And I'm using it to kind of evaluate where everything's going to go on that page. And then I pull out some other embellishing. So I knew I wanted to have arrows on this layout to point to the important numbers. And so I'm just sorting through and looking for the arrows that seem to match up the best. And nothing seems to be quite right because everything is either too blue or too green. And my logo color is kind of in between both of those colors. But I'm going to come up with what I can and just make it work because our supplies are not magic and sometimes they just don't do what we want them to do, and we have to be satisfied with what we have. So again, I am starting to play with spacing, and then I realized, you know what, it's dry enough, at least on the back anyway, for things to stick down. Now it's not dry enough on the front for me to glue things to that wet paint, but I can glue the paper to the rest of my layout and move forward. And of course I ran out of adhesive and had to stop and refill. Very classic, very classic. Now here's where I was thinking about that one blue stripe in the middle was too blue, and that's also the point where I decide, you know what, doesn't matter, because I'm starting to realize as I'm adding my photos here that it's pretty much filling up the page and going to cover up most of that stuff. I should have printed my photos smaller. I should just tell myself when I'm printing photos, just go smaller, because they always take up so much space. And then as I was starting to put those photos down, I realized that I wasn't finished with the mixed media because I knew I wanted to add these spatters on there. Now the inspiration image had just a few spatters, but I wanted to add more color to this page because it's turning very monochromatic, but I wanted to add more color to pick up that background color just a little bit more and tie everything in. And it kind of has that confetti look to it since this is an exciting celebration page for my channel. So I did let that dry, and now I'm ready to start adhering all these pieces down on top. And I'm getting a little fussy about the area of how things are overlapping. I want to make sure to leave room for my title above and my journaling down below. And I'm also getting really picky about letting some of those spatters show in certain areas, and it just wasn't necessary. I think I was feeling in a particularly fussy mood. And now that I've had some of these arrows sitting in front of me, I'm kind of getting used to the idea of the colors and working with the colors that I have. And so I'm making a plan on repeating shapes and colors of arrows around the various frames that I've got going on and pointing to different parts of these statistics here. And I am going to pop them up on foam dots because I'm trying to add more depth to this layout because it is very monochromatic. Popping some things off on foam dots will help keep things a little more visually separated. There we go, that's the word I'm looking for. And once I have those arrows kind of stacked up where I want them to go, I will go ahead and move on to my title. Now, these title pieces I have in this envelope I made for that celebration hop that I mentioned earlier as part of the intro to that hop. And I made those with alcohol ink, so that's not part of this video, but if you like alcohol ink and you want to know more about how I made those letters, let me know and maybe I can pop in with a quick little tutorial on a bit of alcohol ink. So I realized, again, another mistake. These letters are not fitting. I should have brought those out ahead of time in order to find my spacing. And maybe at that point I would have realized print my photos smaller, but I didn't. So I am just squishing everything together as much as I can to get these things to fit. I need to overlap these letters. So as I'm popping them up on foam dots, I am sure not to put foam dots everywhere on the back of the letters, but leaving the spaces empty where they're going to overlap so that I don't have double foam dots making edges of certain numbers bigger than other edges. So that is complete, and I can tuck this photo back in here. And at this point I realized my photo is wrong too. I had an extra thing that was popped up on the screen when I took the screenshot. So I will reprint that photo and you'll see me adhere that in place a little bit later. And then as my photos are now adhered down, my title's now adhered down, I am going to go ahead and permanently glue those arrows in place. And here, yes, here's where you see me change up that photo. And even though it's a minor detail, I did want that whole graph down there to show, and that overlay piece that was popping up was bugging me, so I fixed it. I am playing with some more ideas of frames, and I didn't like that one, so I ditched that, and I'm just going to go with a little bit of a banner piece. So it's not a frame, but it still uses the same color and shape and some of the same texture, not the same shape, some of the same texture in order to highlight the area of this other photo. Now, it was a little big, so I am redoing that with a smaller piece of paper, and I'll get the same effect in the end. And it also allows my little arrow piece that I cut to overhang that. And I like my embellishment clusters to overlap and to flow that way. So it was bugging me that it was the same size. So I fixed that. Yes, today is a nitpicky day. Normally I don't feel quite this nitpicky, but today's the day. All right, I am getting all those things glued down, and then we can move on. Another detail that I'm adding is stamping the dates around each cluster of numbers. Now, I don't have the exact dates because I did take screenshots of these things, but since I edited the screenshots, I've lost the original date. So I'm like, it's kind of a bummer because that's a happy milestone. It would be nice to have had that date. So I just kind of got as close as I could remember it being. And here is one of the final details, is sprinkling some of these stars, and those stars I also made from the same alcohol ink background that I created the numbers out of. And so I got some of those adhered, and then I'll be able to save some of them for another project down the road. Journaling lines are next up, and I needed extra wide journaling lines, so I am just overlapping my stamp set to get those lines to go wider. I did use a piece of tape to prevent any excess ink from going off the edge of that layer of the page, and I will fill in my journaling. And with that done, it is feeling very busy, which is something you'll hear me say pretty commonly. So one of the things I do to help certain elements pop is to outline them with pen. And I wish I had went ahead and grabbed a thicker pen, but that's okay. It'll have to do. It works pretty well on the stars. As you see me go, you can see how the stars start to pop a little bit more, but it could have used a thicker pen for the title there. That's okay. I am going to add in some more star embellishments to these clusters, and that'll help draw the eye around to those clusters across the page. And because the red is in my spatters and my background paper, I think that just a couple pops of red help this layout with a little bit more balance and flow. So that is it for this time around. Don't forget to join me on the 14th for that exciting hop. Please don't forget that this video is part of a hop too. This is our monthly mixed media hop with the Mixed Up Monday group. So all of the other crafters who are playing along this time are linked down below, so go give them some love as well. Until I am back with you again, I hope you have artful days.